Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast The Storm, where social awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy occultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Good evening, folks. This week is mostly a catch-up week, because a lot of the stuff we wanted to get to last week we couldn't quite get to because Brainstormer wasn't feeling well, and I, of course, was also beginning to not feel well as well. So, catching up this week.
Right, and I'm your host slash camera wannabe, the Brainstorm of Pop Culture. How's everyone doing tonight?
I am doing mostly okay. I am no longer feeling ill, which is nice. I started to finally feel better around, Wednesday.
I must just have like a dry throat and a cough every now and then.
Hmm.
Alright, let's finish off the stuff we didn't do last week, or started and didn't finish last week.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the Sandman season 2 casting here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Paul Brennan as Captain Carrot. Uh, or Captain Carnot. I already read that one, didn't I?
I think you did.
Alright. Then Daphne Alexander as Bromy.
I don't remember her. As in, I don't remember the character she's supposed to be playing.
Expected to be one of the Monads associated with the Orpheus storyline.
Okay, so she's one of the rebels of the French Revolution storyline. Okay, that makes sense.
Kathleen Steen as Xantho. Yeah, Monad associated with the Orpheus storyline.
Mm-hmm. I believe it's Maynard, by the way.
How would I know that if the way it's written?
I'm gathering from context clues because the Maenads are the servants of Bacchus / Dionysus in Greek mythology, and they do kind of play a role in the French Revolution storyline with Orpheus's head. So probably Maenads.
Joy Nadine as Danny Capax. Son, most likely Danny Capax, son of Bernie Capax. Bernie appeared in the Sandman comics and was a lawyer affiliated with the Endless Destruction.
Yeah, I vaguely remember this mostly because like Destruction and his involvement in the story is basically the last good Sandman story before the terrible ending that makes no fucking sense in universe. So my recollection of things relating to Destruction is somewhat vague.
Gavin Spokes as Jeremy. In Sandman's second season, Spokes will portray a character called Jeremy. It's unclear how large his role will be and if it is based on a character from the comics. Okay, I don't have anything to say to that then.
Jeremy. Where have I heard the name Jeremy in relation to this? I know there is a character named Jeremy. I could have sworn he was somebody's butler or servant or something, but I don't remember. But next.
Alright, Coyote Kinyemi. Sorry if I'm pronouncing names wrong.
He's not good at names, folks.
I'm really not. Coyote has joined the second season of The Sandman in the role of Chris. A character of the same name appeared in the comics and was one of the caretakers of Orpheus.
Okay, so they are adapting the Orpheus story in season 2 then. Which means that season 3 will basically only be related to adapting the ending that sucks. Joy. Moving on.
Daniel Hoffman Gill as Gilliman. Just that he portray the character. I don't say.
A lot of these are very light on
Andre
information.
Flynn.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Unknown role.
Stop putting the unknown roles in. You put them in the article when you figure out what character they're playing at the very fucking least. The unknown roles were meaningless.
Will Coban in unknown role.
Again, this is like even by the standards of like online journalism, this is bullshit. One, you should keep all the unlisted or unknown roles at the bottom of the page so that they're all in line with each other. Yeah, but they're intermixed with ones they actually know the names of. My point is that you should go through all the ones you actually have the information on first and leave the unknown roles at the fucking bottom. And only the unknown roles at the fucking bottom. If you're going to include them all, my way of thinking says if you don't know what role they're playing, you don't actually know enough about the role to make any inferences or convey any information. So you probably shouldn't even include the unknown roles in your cast summation. But if you insist on putting the cast summation in, it should be at the bottom after you get through all the roles you actually do know the names of. This is lazy journalism. Sorry. Moving on.
Joe Berman in unknown role. Wilwan Abayala Awokinyoran. I don't know. Unknown role. That covers all new cast members who have been revealed so far. We will update this list as new castings are confirmed. And okay.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to Sandman season 2. Not that I was looking forward to it before this cast list was announced or anything, because season 1 shit the bed so badly that they either have to undo everything they did in season 1 or it's doomed to be miserable the whole time. So unfortunately, Netflix is going to butcher something that I really like again. At least in season 3, they'll only be butchering the part of the story where the story was bad to begin with. So I won't have as much room to complain in season 3. because the ending of The Sandman is as bad as the rest of it is good. So by the time they get to season 3 and actually get to the part of the story that pisses me off, I no longer have any capacity to care, which is nice. At least I don't have to watch something that was good get ruined again. Just have to watch something that was already bad probably get worse.
Moving on.
Yep, moving forward.
Alright. It's from thegamer.com originally, written by Mike Drucker. Games industry is hold on. Games industry is not for developers. Why even make video games anymore?
Because games that actually have an audience and they try to please that audience do well. The only games that don't do well are the ones who shit on the intelligence of the audience and then get surprised when their bottom line inevitably becomes affected by the fact that they told their audience to fuck off. Which is, of course, not helped by the existence of video game journalists, who are probably one of the most loathsome creatures on the face of this planet, as a general rule. Moving on.
Why even make video games anymore? No, really, why? We've hit another week and another massive layoff, this time from a company that makes one of the biggest games on Earth, Destiny 2. Oh, and this follows the very same company laying off 100 people in 2023. As we've seen over the last couple of years, even working for a well-regarded legendary developer is not enough to save yourself.
No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Hey, hey, hey. Goodbye. The reason I'm gloating there so flippantly is because of this thing where, have you considered potentially doing your job and actually acquiescing to your audience? If the answer is no on both counts, then it is not only unsurprising that you should lose your job, but actually beneficial for the industry for you to lose your jobs. The people being laid off are by and large dead weights. The people who have an active distaste for the fan base, the people who have an active distaste for their audience, or an active distaste for the desire to make money. When you are in a capitalist capitalist company wherein you want to make money and you want to please your audience, and you come in there with social justice in one hand and anti-capitalism in the other, it is inevitable that you will be a drain on that company. And that when it finally occurs to the company that their audience might matter, your head will be the one on the chopping block. But again, you get no sympathy from me because you did this yourselves by coming in there with social justice in one hand and anti-capitalism in the other. Moving on.
Alright. And while we're finally getting the sequels to series like Dragon Age, let's not forget BioWare also fired one of its experienced writers. A writer, it is worth noting, who literally created some.
On occasion, there is this very useful phrase known as "What have you done for me lately?" that comes to mind here, which I'm bringing up because even if these people made something significant 15, 20 years ago, it doesn't matter if they are, at the moment, actively disdaining their own audience and trying to do everything but make their audience happy. Happy audiences result in giving the company money. Unhappy audiences eventually tell the company to fuck off. And when the company gets the financial results of being told to fuck off over and over and over again by the majority of the audience, the people who caused the audience to tell the company to fuck off are usually the people you want to blame for the company thereby not doing as well financially. I.e., when you go out of your way to displease or actively have contempt for your audience, eventually they will tell you to fuck off and you will lose your job. And no amount of social justice woo or anti-capitalism woo is going to save you, because at the end of the day, someone somewhere in that company does actually want to A, make money, and B, please their audience. Moving on.
Alright, the love of the game is no longer a good reason.
Actually, it is a perfectly justified reason. In fact, most gamers engage in gaming because they have a love for the product. The issue is, in the modern day zeitgeist of the gaming industry, the studios go out of their way to hate their audience and therefore provide them with inferior product, usually deliberately, because they want to express contempt for their main audience. And when everyone and their dog in a given company goes out of their way to express contempt for their audience, eventually the audience returns that contempt in kind and thereby refuses to buy the inferior product that said company is now hawking. The thing is, oh mighty games journal of the internet, the fact that you don't understand that the layoffs at gaming studios are related to people being pissed off at the inferior nature of your product is the problem in and of itself. Because instead of making the sensible solution of, okay, let's figure out what our audiences want and then give it to them, you all, by and large, think it is your job to morally grandstand over your audience and thereby demonstrate to them contempt. And because you've taken it upon yourselves to treat your audience with contempt, usually very vocally, eventually the audience will stop getting mad and just straight up disengage from buying your product in the first place. I.e., when you make something deliberately to piss your audience off, you don't then get to be kel surprised when they are inevitably pissed off. If you try to piss somebody off and then they become pissed off at you, that is a natural consequence of that action. You don't then get to frame yourself as the victim of your audience telling you to fuck off when you told them that you wanted them to fuck off. Moving on. Left brainstormer left for some reason.
Sorry, I did it real quick. I'm right here.
Okay.
Oh, I know. People make games because they love them to make these decisions. Because, Buster, they are not on board with your theory. Hello?
Go on.
I read it.
I don't know if the connection cut you off mid-sentence or if it was just a weird sentence, but there was nothing worth responding to in that point of view.
Those suits would never accept less pay or worse working conditions because it's an industry they love. That's only because the workers have to hear again and again and again. You think the corporate executives who killed Tango Gameworks did it because they just cared about video games so much? Think the massive conglomerates shuttering studio after studio are doing it so we can only get 10 out of 10 masterpieces? Come on, folks.
Okay, and again, you're framing this incorrectly, Games Journal. It's not the suits versus the developers. It's often the suits and the developers versus their own audience. And that is why AAA gaming is going downhill, all the while 2A gaming, AA gaming is coming up, because AA gaming is populated by people who actually do have a creative vision, and more importantly, also have a pulse on what the audience wants and isn't contemptuous of them. People like the people who created Helldivers, people who created the Coffin of Andy and Lele, people who created Stellar Blade, people who created Nikkei. The list goes on and on and on. The issue again is games journalism and the games industry in general has gone out of its way to broadcast en masse that gamers are toxic and fandom is a problem. And so developers in turn go out of their way, or are forced to go out of their way by a bunch of meddling bitches in HR and PR, to make choices that will deliberately alienate the audience. And then when those choices made to deliberately alienate the audience result in an alienated audience, everybody looks shocked, surprised, and they don't seem to understand that when you tell your audience that they are all toxic, evil man babies and should fuck off, eventually they will fuck off. And the reason they fucked off is because you told them to, over and over and over again ad nauseum. Moving on.
Perhaps you believe that these unending layoffs are an economic necessity. Rates have changed. Companies overspent during the pandemic. Decisions during the pandemic, because people talk about corporate financial decisions like they're natural disasters and not something controlled by real humans.
I don't know if you're aware of this, Games Journal asshat, but decisions made by people are often motivated by existing factors. You would think for a group of people so ass mad about the concept of material conditions, you would be able to understand the fact that someone who wants to A, make money, and B, please their audience will naturally eventually remove themselves from any course of action that doesn't either make them oodles of money and or please their audience. And considering that the AAA Games Journal space is such that it goes out of its way to alienate and shame and have contempt for its own audience, eventually the financial consequences of that attitude and those adjoining actions will come home to roost. You can't just sit there for a decade, and yes, I mean a decade, considering we can go back to Gamergate circa 2013. You can't just sit there for a decade and say our audiences are all slack-jawed subhumans and toxic and entitled and fandom is bad, derp over and over again, and then not have any organic consequences arise from that any reasonably thinking CEO or financial advisor person wouldn't look at and see, oh wait, shit, when we actively disdain our audience, they tell us to fuck off and go spend their money somewhere else, and it affects our bottom line negatively. This is a natural consequence of when you tell your inbuilt audience to go fuck themselves, eventually they will leave and go fuck themselves, just like you wanted them to. The issue is that, unlike what your critical theory infused post Frankfurt School nonsense would have you believe, there isn't some lingering modern audience that's going to come and replace them and pull your ass out of the fire. If you make deliberately anti-capitalist decisions, quote unquote, don't be surprised when you financially therefore suffer by that action. Because finances are very much the domain of capitalism, at least in the West. So there. Moving on.
All right. So again, who made the decisions that led to these problems? Was it the writers getting laid off? The musicians, developers, producers, support staff? None of them made a poor financial decision. The business executives did. Wow, okay, wild. Now, who makes the games that actually bring in the money? Is it those same business executives? Here's a clue, no. But somehow the workers who made the games are the ones who get thrown off the side of the ship, and that's just the cost of doing business. Those
Okay,
artists should have known better before taking a job at a company run by a person who will never suffer consequences.
okay. Here is the issue, my lovely game journo brat. If you make a creative decision that is a terrible creative decision that alienates large sums of your audience and gets them to fuck off in droves, that will eventually affect your bottom financial line. And the people who are concerned about that bottom financial line will then see that, notice that it is these same people constantly making bad or counterintuitive creative decisions and alienating large sums of the audience, and let them go. Because you see, again, pointing this out for those in the cheap seats, the AAA gaming industry might be in the complete shitter of its own making, but the AA game space is doing fine. Games like Hogwarts Legacy, games like Stellar Blade, games like The Coffin of Andy and Lele, games like Helldivers 2, and so on and so on and so on ad nauseum. Because, okay, very simple economic principle coming at you here. When you please your audience and give them a product they consider worth paying for, they pay for it, and you make a lot of money, you see. And then the people who are focused on the making of the money are thereby very happy, as well as the audience, because the audience gets the thing they want, the financial business person gets what they want, and everybody goes away happy. This does not, however, work, unfortunately, when you operate under the assumption, at least implicitly, that everything the audience wants is not just wrong, but somehow toxic, entitled, and immoral. And if you proceed on the assumption that everything the audience wants is somehow toxic, entitled, and immoral, and go out of your way to spite said toxic, entitled, and immoral audience members, you will make something that will make neither the financial person nor the audience member happy with you. And then when it comes time to lay things off and get rid of the dead weight of the company, your name will be the one to come up. The only people that it is actually acceptable to make upset in this way, ironically, are the creatives themselves. Because frankly, creatives working in a industry that is based on moving product and pleasing audiences need to get this very simple thing through their head. Your ego, your vision, your whims, your desires, your whatever are dog shit unless you can actually convey the quality of those ideas to your audience and thereby please them so that they give you money for having pleased them, and then everybody goes away happy. I.e., if it is a choice between your artistic derp or pleasing your audience will win every time. This is why one of the oldest sayings in marketing is the audience or the money is always right. The customer is always right, etc. Again, the difference between that and modern gaming or modern entertainment in general is before the standard was the customer is always right. The current standard is the customer is not just always wrong, but entitled and immoral in so doing. And based on that assumption, creative asshats, fresh from goddamn art schools that taught them nothing but how to unlearn the value of art, created a bunch of product that hated its audience, hated capitalism in general, and mocked and derided standards of merit, standards of beauty, and standards of meritocracy. Thus, you failed, and now you are being held accountable for your failures. If you do not grasp this very fundamental principle of make your audience and shareholders happy in so doing, then you are a fucking moron. The audience is not immoral for wanting the things they want, and you should not be morally put out to provide it for them. The fact that you are is very much the goddamn problem. Moving on. When Brainstormer gets back.
I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry, I disappeared for like a sec. Just
Mhm.
alright. Now I'm not saying nobody should make games. I love games. A lot of my friends are in the industry. A lot of my friends have also lost jobs while creating financially successful products. Not just games that have performed, games that hit their milestone. But hold on,
Go ahead.
games that hit their milestone, but folks still ended up losing their jobs because they had little to no labor protections.
And again, I would have sympathy for that if this wasn't a problem of your own making. And the fact that you, as a games journalist, are nepotistically connected to the people in the industry is also part of the problem. It goes back to the whole games journo pros thing that got Gamergate off the ground to begin with. The games journalists and the people in the games industry should not be on a first name goddamn basis. It is your job to hold this industry accountable, and you can't hold that industry accountable if you're nepotistically tied to it. I.e., if you are so busy networking with people in the industry that you can't actually meaningfully hold it to account, you are the problem. And by the way, again, this is the issue. You may think that the games were financially successful because the prices of games themselves are skyrocketing. But if you actually went and looked at the situation on the ground, you would see the same amount of money is being spent on fewer units, and that results in there being fewer units sold, which means it's a bad display of financial stability. Compare the incestuous, nepotistic nonsense of the AAA games industry with the AA games industry. The people who are actually independent developers, and so on. Games like The Coffee of Andy and Lele, Stellar Blade, Helldivers, Hogwarts Legacy, etc. all did gangbusters and are financially kicking the asses of the AAA games industry. Because the AAA game industry is larger, we can reasonably say that this is not the right way around for the industry to be behaving if it was indeed healthy. In a healthy games industry, the AAA gaming market would be the most successful gaming market because it is the most prestigious version of that gaming market. However, in the current industry, the AA games industry is more successful than the AAA games industry because, unlike the AAA games industry, which has been institutionally captured and corporatized, the AA games industry has its fingers on the pulse of the actual audience and don't consider it a moral wrong to give the audience what they want. Meanwhile, large sums of the AAA games industry and the people covering the AAA games industry for journalism do actually think that games like Helldivers 2, Stellar Blade, Coffin of Andy and Lele, etc. are fucking immoral and the audience should be ashamed of itself. And you don't get to morally grandstand against your audience in perpetuity ad nauseum if you are then also reliant on that audience for financial solvency. Do you see? I.e., the the healthy approach of the customer is always right, or at least more often than not right, is much more of a healthy relationship with your audience than the customer is not just wrong but entitled and immoral for wanting the thing they want. And unless and until you address this issue, the AAA games industry will continue to fail because it will continue to have dead weight, which then must be jettisoned in order so that the industry may function better eventually. And sooner or later, the only developers worth hiring will be the AA developers. And maybe those AA developers can take that attitude into the AAA games industry and go on to please their audiences accordingly. But until that day, the AAA industry can go fuck itself because they think their own audience is entitled and immoral. And that will never be a good financial decision to double down furthermore and furthermore and furthermore on that attitude. Ever. Moving on. Also, hello, Brainstormer. Testing.
Give me like
Okay,
a
there we
second.
go.
Everything's loading still.
hmm
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good, good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we're good. That's why I tested. Because I wanted to make sure that your mic was coming through okay. Oh Christ.
Still loading. Give it a second.
Oh.
All right. All right. So, side note, there's one of the nice things about unions. While unions don't make it impossible to fire people, at the very least, they can make it a lot more difficult, expensive for companies to just dump staff to look good on a quarterly report.
But okay, here's the thing:
Because let's be
if
honest,
if
these
you're not,
corporate executives
well,
love firing people. Hold on. Because let's be honest, these corporate executives love firing people as much as their social media managers hate having to deal with all the ratioing online.
okay, here's the thing: if you were doing your jobs and pleasing the audience, not to mention making your company money, you wouldn't be facing firings. The easiest way to avoid being fired is to be good at your job. So good that they can't ignore you, as the famous book says. But you and your kind are not good at your jobs and have active contempt for your fan bases, and your audience is returning that contempt in kind by disengaging with your products. No amount of unionization or bureaucratic institutional capture rigmarole will prevent you from eventually having to pay the consequences of your actions. You guys have been running on fumes for 10 goddamn years, and yes, again, I am going all the way back to 2013 with the start of Gamergate and so on. You guys have been running on fumes for 10 years, and somehow the games industry has managed to maintain its solvency for that 10 years. But sooner or later, we've all got to answer to the consequences of our actions. And your only suggestion about how you could avoid these consequences is not let's make a better product. It's not let's outreach to the fans and make the fans happy. It's not let's make the company enough money that they can actually be fiscally solvent. It's let's put a bunch of bureaucratic, unionistic red tape in the way so it's harder to fire us even though we deserve it. Do you see how that is the wrong way around? You didn't even attempt to go with the let's not deserve it option. Let's try not to be the ones who deserve to be fired. Because here's the thing, I guarantee you, if the industry was making money hand over fist and the audience outreach was completely and utterly on point, no one would be getting fired because there would be no need to fire anyone because the company would be solvent enough that it could not only support the existing staff but actually also support more staff. In a healthy industry, you don't see a bunch of firings, you see hirings. In an unhealthy industry, you inevitably see firings because someone at the top finally gets a clue and says, wait, you mean being actively contemptuous towards our own audience wasn't the right move and is actually costing us oodles and oodles of money? Well, maybe we should get rid of all the people and all the middle management who told us that having active contempt for our audience base was the right idea. Again, why was your first reaction to we are not good at our jobs, not let's get better at our jobs? Instead, it was let's rig the system even harder so they can't fire us or it makes it much more difficult to fire us. That is the sign of a person who has absolutely no faith in either the audience and their intelligence or in the idea of being good at their jobs. And yes, when push comes to shove, the people who don't believe in meritocracy or have contempt for meritocracy are the ones who will get the door. Because that's the people who are dragging down the company and making it non-profitable. I'm sorry to be on the side of the soulless corporation at this point, but at least the soulless corporation can acknowledge that there's a problem. You're not even in the headspace of acknowledging there's a problem. You're in the headspace of, how do I bureaucratically rig the system even harder so it's harder to get rid of me, even though I don't deserve my job? Which is the wrong headspace to be in, ever. Moving on.
Right. Right. The indie scene has its own problems.
I'm sorry, but the indie scene is kicking your ass. You probably shouldn't throw stones at it, considering its walls are made of stone and yours are made of freaking saran wrap at this point. Not even glass anymore. Moving on.
You might say the solution is just go indie. Sure, that's worked great for a lot of people. It's also worked terribly for a lot of people. Going indie is not easy. We have confirmation bias from games like Undertale and Stardew Valley. Just maintain a day job while you slowly make the game you want isn't a sustainable business plan for everybody. Nor is have a rich parent and not for nothing. If you don't own the indie company or only own a minority stake, there's always the chance that they become too swallowed by
In other
AAA
words,
corporation and get stripped for parts. But at least you got a free. Hold on. But at least you got a free Embracer Group shirt at.
okay, the issue you're having in the mind of a sane person is simply this. The indie scene favors the people who can please the audience. The people who want to make the gaming equivalent of art house movies that have active contempt for their audience and are so up their own ass and high on their own fumes that they want to be more quote unquote artistic and less meritocratic will fail. Yes. Because, stay with me, this is the part that you're missing. It's painfully obvious, but it's the part that you're missing anyway. When you try to make the self-indulgent art house schlock, it fails because it's not good. Because it doesn't have any meritocratic qualities. And no, containing the contents of your Critical Theory 101 textbook from art school college doesn't count as a merit. I know that's literally the only merit you people can see anymore, because you go to art school not to become better artists, but to essentially become deprogrammed as artists. But, yeah, no, being all pretentious and critical theory and postmodernism and deconstruction, not popular, nor is it meritocratic. The indie games that do well, the Stellar Blades, the Helldiver 2s, the Coffin of Andy and Lele's, the Hogwarts Legacies, are good because they please the audience and make the audience happy. As long as your internal algorithm is operating under the assumption the last thing you ever want to do is make the audience happy, you will always fail in a medium where you're supposed to be making money and shifting units. And no amount of the gaming equivalent of art house schlock is going to dig you out of this hole, because no amount of the games industry equivalent of art house schlock is going to be meritocratic enough to actually catch people's attention. End of discussion. Moving on.
Why should people want to make games? What reason do talented people have to spend their lives perfecting their craft if they're going to be kicked out the door anyway? Software engineers could probably make more money programming bank equipment. Artists could probably make more money by doing design work for pharmaceutical ads. Sure, they might not be as exciting, but at least these jobs aren't punishing hardworking people for doing what they love. Would you rather be bored and paid well and appreciated, or excited and constantly terrified you'll never work again? It's a tough choice once you start having to put food in people's mouths and think about your future.
Okay, here is the other issue, which I'm glad you gave me an organic excuse to bring up. You keep framing this as devs love their craft or whatever the fuck. But the truth is that they don't. The truth is the average art school graduate in today's day and age unlearns the capacity to love anything about art except for non-diegetic socio-political and moral themes, or Frankfurt School infused critical theory, i.e., most of the people who are allegedly working as creatives in the industry in this day and age, and the same is true to some extent of Hollywood as well, don't love gaming for its own sake or want to please the audience for its own sake. They see art as a moral and socio-political means to an end, as an excuse to stroke their own artistic egos, and nothing of substance will ever come from that attitude. You will never, listen to me very carefully, you will never make anything of artistic worth from an art school in the modern day age, because the modern day age and its art schools are lousy with Frankfurt School infused postmodernism and or post-structuralism, which treats art as a means to an end or as a attempt by an author to communicate a singular socio-political or moral message. And you cannot make anything worthwhile judging art that way. You cannot. It is impossible because it treats art not as an end in itself, but as a means to a moral or socio-political or egotistical end. And nothing of value, nothing that will please people, can be brought about by that mindset, with the possible exception of in spite of itself, i.e., some artists are so good, so instinctively good at being artists, that they can sometimes succeed in spite of themselves, even with the handicap placed on them by the art school mentality. People like Alan Moore, people like Neil Gaiman in his prime, etc., and so on. Even though these people were lousy with this Frankfurt School gobbledygook, they were so good in spite of themselves that they managed to be successful anyway. But that is only a temporary solution to the problem, because here's the thing. If you go to an art school and they teach you to see art as a non-diegetic means to a socio-political or moral end, and never as an end in itself, then if you do succeed in spite of yourself, you will actually grow to resent your success, because your success isn't coming from people worshiping your artistic ego or people filleting themselves on your socio-political themes, but because your art is good in spite of itself. And this is very much something we've been seeing happen recently with so many people who were the outsider artists in the 90s, who did have the beginnings of that art school mentality, but were talented enough to be good in spite of themselves. People like Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman. And what we have discovered is that these people will grow to resent the fact that they were successful in spite of themselves rather than because of themselves. And it is a terrible thing, because it ends up usually circling back around and destroying anything of value that that person actually made, because it doesn't conform with their art school mentality that they learned in said art school. And inevitably, they will meddle with whatever made them famous or relevant in the first place so bad that any value that it originally did contain gets sucked out like a brain through a straw. And those of us who actually like the material in spite of the artistic meddling will inevitably have to watch our favorite things be destroyed in front of our very fucking eyes, which will result in us being very put out and very opposed to the artist's meddling, and will get us branded toxic or entitled fanboys or something. This happens all the time, and that's why I'm warning you now, because it will become relevant later. Nothing of value artistically ever came out of an art school. At least not since the 1800s, when all this post-Frankfurt School critical theory, postmodern crap got going. Moving on.
To be fair, I'm painting it with a pretty broad brush, and there are people who will stick around in terrible conditions because they love video games that much. And yes, there are also companies that reward them by strict Japanese labor laws, but still they do exist, including in the West. But I've worked in television most of my adult life, and the vibe can often be the same as many gaming companies. You don't like this bad thing, the bad thing happening. It creates a revolving door of talent where the inexperienced people either get or their contributions to the company raise the employee's value, and so they get fired.
No, they get fired as and when their ideas are demonstrated to be shit, and they're never held accountable for their ideas being shit, because it would be rude to call their ideas shit as and when they are shit. And eventually, they will build up enough nepotism or enough passive inertia in the company. They will only get their organic consequences as and when the company goes under, which will give them about 10 years to poison whatever industry they happen to be in. But at the end of those 10 years to poison whatever industry they happen to be in, someone who has an eye towards either fandom response or the finances of the company will come to terms with the fact that every creative idea they put out has been counterproductive and shitty and alienated the audience, and then they will finally have the organic consequences of their actions. Unfortunately, because of that 10-year gap between when their attempt first got made and when they face those consequences, according to the people facing those consequences, they will seem to come out of nowhere because said people are not very self-aware. It never seems to occur to them that they could resolve this by actually just giving the people what they want. Or if it does occur to them, they are absolutely abjectly against doing so because they have convinced themselves that their audience isn't just wrong, but entitled and immoral. That same level of contempt will eventually alienate the largest part of the audience, wherein the largest part of the audience will go to other forms of entertainment to replace the company that they are being alienated from. Which is why companies, or rather games, like Stellar Blade, Helldivers 2, Hogwarts Legacy, The Coffin of Andy and Lele, and so on, all become more successful as the AAA industry and its game journal defenders become less and less and less successful. But unfortunately for you, this is actually the proper way that the games industry is supposed to function. If you make bad product often enough and consistently enough, you will have to pay those consequences sooner or later. And the more you try to forestall those consequences, like the anti-Gamergate movement did for the last 10 or so years, the harsher those consequences are going to hit you, and the more out of the blue, at least from your perspective, they will come out of the blue and hit you. Moving on.
Let's see. And I'm not even touching on the fun times that video game workers have when weirdos online get mad about some fish, because video game workers are far closer to the ground than the business executives. They're the ones who get the most harassment for whatever grift takes center stage that week. I'm sure
See,
being a character designer is a blast every time. Every time some podcaster in his 50s sends people to attack them for not giving some digital broad perfect gazongas. Imagine this being on and mergers and acquisitions making the future of your career a giant Riddler-sized question mark.
okay, that whole paragraph, that whole demonizing your own audience thing you just did, that is the problem. That is the thing causing you to have to face these consequences you don't like. Because here's the thing. Again, I would go over it for those who are very, very slow, otherwise known as the game journals of the world. If you go out of your way to treat your audience like they are subhuman and immoral, they will give you that kind of treatment. Because when someone goes out of their way to purchase a product from you, and then you tell them that they are subhuman and immoral and should fuck off, they are eventually going to stop raging at you and just leave. Because you don't like when people express being angry with you for telling them that they are immoral. So eventually, people will stop raging and just leave. And when people stop raging and just finally leave, and seek their entertainment sources elsewhere, in this case, leaving the AAA gaming media for the sake of the AA gaming media, because the AA gaming media does still believe in the principle of the customer is always right, you will bear those consequences on your own shoulders because you actually do somewhat deserve them. Because when you tell your audience, the people for whom you are supposed to be making these products, that they are immoral for having any problems with the product, or immoral for noticing any errors in quality control, eventually they are A, going to rage at you quite viscerally, which you are then going to frame as hatred, even though it's not. It's just a customer being like, I paid for a thing and I wasn't given what I was promised, therefore I'm pissed. And B, eventually they will just stop raging and leave. And when they disengage from the industry that you are a part of and seek an alternative in some other industry, the money that they were going to spend on you is now going to go elsewhere. For example, to games like Hogwarts Legacy, uh, Stellar Blade, Helldivers, Coffin of Andy and Lele, etc., ad nauseum. Moving on.
Oh, sorry, motherfucker. I had my. I was literally reading, and then I noticed I muted myself.
Okay, it's fine. I just it's just a good thing that it wasn't a technical issue this time.
I was halfway through the paragraph when I noticed.
Okay. Well, rewind and continue.
Seriously, why should talented people? All right.
You already read that part.
Seriously, why should talented people want to make games if this is how they're going to be treated? Why should workers spend their lives?
Why should audiences spend their
Why
financial
should workers spend their lives
resources?
learning a trade if half the job involves a panic attack where there's an all hands meeting?
Moving on. Sorry. You mute again? Oh dear. Technical difficulties. Yeah. But while he's gone and rebooting things, I will continue in the thing I was going to say before I realized he was only half done with the sentence. Why should audiences spend money on a thing that they consider to be extremely low quality to support people who have active contempt for them and think they are entitled and immoral, and who will inevitably strive to give the audience the least amount of anything they want as they can? If your argument is, won't somebody please think of the poor game developers, I would advance in response to that query, won't somebody please think of the goddamn audiences supporting these industries? Ever. Or will you just whine and call the audience toxic and entitled again? Hello. Hello? Oh dear.
Okay, I'm back.
Huzzah.
Hello?
Hello. Can you not hear me?
Okay. Now I can hear you.
Okay. Good.
Just went staticky for like a second, so I wasn't sure.
Ah, I see.
All right. Let me share screen. I'm gonna reread that just so you have the full context of that paragraph.
Yep.
Okay. Seriously, why should talented people want to make games if this is how they're going to be treated? Why should workers spend their lives learning a trade if half of the job involves having a panic attack when there's an all hands meeting? Lots of people want to become doctors, but most don't want to work at a hospital that's somehow in a perpetual state of burning down. At this point, the only people who are safe in the video game industry are CEOs who wear ill-fitting biker jackets and developers who seem to only take photos with Jeff Keighley.
Okay. There's a third faction of people who are safe in the industry, the people who are benefiting from your and your cronies' incompetence, namely the people who believe in the principle, or at least feign to believe in the principle, that the customer is always right. The customer isn't some entitled, toxic, immoral fuckwit. Those people are doing fine. That's why games like Stellar Blade, The Coffin of Andy and Lele, Hogwarts Legacy, Helldivers 2, and so Nikke and so on are all making money hand over fist while the AAA industry continues to flounder. Are you ever going to countenance the idea that some of the reasons why the industry you care so much about is failing are problems created of your own making? Because as a general rule, people don't like to spend their money in places or on products that they find to be of low quality, and that the people who make those things of low quality also constantly tell them that they are toxic, immoral, entitled, etc., ad nauseum. Try believing that the audience deserves the things they pay for and that they should be given things they enjoy in order to spend their money on. I guarantee you, if you go with that assumption, if you go with the assumption that games like Cuphead, Stellar Blade, Coffin of Andy and Lele, Hogwarts Legacy, etc., the ones that give the audience what they want, if you go with the assumption that those games are to be mimicked, or that those games are to be used as a test case for what to do correctly, you will start making money again. And the second you start making money again, the people who are concerned with the making of the money and the positive audience opinion of the brand will stop laying people off. But if you refuse on like moral principle to ever give the audience what they can be demonstrated financially to want, if you refuse on like moral grounds not to shame your audience, then inevitably this will continue, because that is the main issue. When you tell your audience for 11 years and change to fuck off, you don't then get to be all shock horror when they inevitably decide to fuck off and get their entertainment elsewhere, namely in the form of the AA gaming media as opposed to the AAA gaming media that is both ideologically captured by social justice and corporatized to the point of stupidity. Moving on.
Alright, we should be on our knees thanking our lucky stars that anybody with an ounce of sanity is willing to make a game anymore. And last year alone, the industry has chewed up and spit out so much incredible talent that it's wild to think a reasonable person, let alone teams of incredible workers, would still be willing to develop interactive media. Those folks shouldn't consider themselves the lucky ones who still have jobs, and they shouldn't be willing to take crap because someone is in line behind them. They deserve protections and working conditions that reflect the quality of what they produce and the massive paydays they bring their corporate overlords. Making a video game should be the coolest thing someone gets to do with their life, not an eternal nightmare of crunch and unemployment.
See, I agree with that statement, but here's the problem. Your job security is reflective of the quality you bring to the company. You just don't bring that much quality to the company. While the people that do, the developing teams behind things like Cuphead, like Stellar Blade, like Helldivers 2, like Hogwarts Legacy, like Coffin of Andy and Lele, etc., they actually do bring something to their respective companies, and so they are successful accordingly. You and your friends bring nothing, and very often they bring even less than nothing. They actually bring negative value to the company, and that's why they're treated as such. I agree with the principle that their compensation should reflect the quality they give to the company. The issue is you don't seem to realize how much of a worth sink a lot of this ideological bullshit is to the respective companies. There's a reason why games in the AA gaming space are doing worlds better and therefore are also financially and job-wise secure, and stuff in the AAA gaming space, co-opted as it is by corporatism and or social justice, is constantly being treated as if it is a worth sink because it is a worth sink. Moving on. You're actually being
Uh,
as compensated as you should be. You just need to do better so that you actually bring more value to the company. moving on. Ugh.
Alright, so this is from ScreenCrush.com. James Wan to direct Creature of the Black from the Black Lagoon remake, as published August 13th, 2024.
Mm-hmm.
James Wan is reportedly in talks for a remake of The Creature from the Black Lagoon. The horror movie icon, who is known for his work on the likes of the Saw and Conjuring franchises, appears set to helm a reboot of... Huh. Thought it was older than that.
What?
Creature of Black Lagoon. Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah.
I didn't know it came out in 1954. I thought it came out like with the other Universal monsters, like around like for the 40s.
No, it was 50s.
Huh.
Yeah. It was one of the it was one of the later arrivals
as
to the
reported
Universal
from
Monsters canon.
as reported by Deadline, Wan will serve as a producer on the movie, while he is also in early talks to direct the monster flick. Would be the first project he's attached himself to direct since his production company Atomic Monster merged with Blumhouse. The original Creature from Black Lagoon focused on a prehistoric water-breathing humanoid monster, along with a group of scientists trying to study him. Juliet Adams starred alongside Richard Carlson as the woman who caught the Gill Man's eye, while Jack Arnold was director of the classic black and white feature. The likes of John Carpenter, Ivan Reitman, Guillermo del Toro, and more have all tried to revive the creature from the 1980s onwards. With Universal also looking at the idea as part of its Dark Universe monster movies in the 2010s.
I
Actually,
mean,
hold on. I will find a photo.
Sorry.
No. Please say your thing. I'm looking up something real quick.
Okay. I mean, this works really well in terms of like pairing the right director to the right source material, because we know he can do horror because Conjuring and Saw, and we know he can do underwater because both Aquaman. So if anyone working in Hollywood, well, I would say if anyone working in Hollywood today can do it, then it would be James Wan. I almost stopped myself and said Guillermo del Toro, but then I remembered he already did his version of Creature from the Black Lagoon. It was Shape of Water. And honestly, I kind of wish he would make a whole universe worth of like Universal monster romances, because that would be cool. But yeah, James Wan definitely has the right background as somebody who wants to bring to life Creature from the Black Lagoon, because he's already good at the horror bit, and we know he can do the underwater bit pretty well as well because both Aquaman. So just take the horror thing, add the underwater thing, and boom, we have a Creature from the Black Lagoon remake. Though honestly, again, I kind of wish that Del Toro would just add more to his monsters as romance protagonist universe that he started with Shape of Water.
Yeah,
because I think that it's a
I
really
still need to watch
interesting
that
idea.
movie.
Yeah, you do. It's good. There are like bits and pieces of social justice in it because it was a Oscar bait movie, and so we have to shove the social justice in it somewhere. But it was handled like neutrally enough that it's not overbearing. And of course, Guillermo del Toro doing something fantastical will always be awesome because that's what he do. And if I can ever find a dub version of Pan's Labyrinth, I will gladly add that to my movie collection. But apparently there are no dub versions of Pan's Labyrinth because Guillermo wanted it to be a Spanish language film, which, on the one hand, I can appreciate why he, as a Spanish filmmaker, would want that, but as someone who has a very minimalistic tolerance for subtitles, I need I need to be able to understand what people are saying. And I have optic nerve damage, so I can't read as quickly as the subtitles tend to go by. Anyway, did you find the thing?
Yeah, because it mentioned John Carpenter a remake they wanted to do for Creature of Black Lagoon back in like the 90s, and I was just looking for an image because I had seen that on Twitter like a while ago, and I had sent it to Dalton, and now I have a chance to talk about it. I just thought it was like something cool to talk about real quick. But let's get a little more through the article a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Will Beal wrote a script, but the franchise idea imploded with the studio instead turning to a filmmaker-focused approach. And instead of interconnected films, this has resulted in standalone movies like The Invisible Man and Renfield, while a remake of The Wolfman is in the pipeline. For once, take on the Creature of the Black Lagoon, it's believed he will pursue a grounded and modernized retelling which will lean into visceral horror while still paying respect to the classic. Okay.
Again, James Wan definitely has the background necessary to do this because it's, half horror, which he's already good at, and half underwater scenes, which he's already good at because Aquaman 1 and 2.
Atomic Monster and Blumhouse, which has a first look deal with Universal, have already collaborated on Night Swim earlier this year, while the studios are also producing a sequel to Megan, due out in 2025, and a spinoff called Soulmate planned for the following year.
Night Swim was awful, but I'm not going to hold it against anybody because January horror films are almost always awful. That's kind of what January
Also,
is
hello,
there
Giant
for.
Turtle. Yeah. I'm an hour 15 behind, so it will be a bit before I'm up to date. How are you guys doing? Also, reading check. Let me know if you'd rather I'd stop doing that just in case. No, I don't mind you doing that. I'm not gonna lie. I've been really busy with work and stuff and just life. Fortunately, I haven't been able to read Worm as much as I would want, as much as I want to.
I
But
decided
I'm
to
also
start.
doing more.
I decided to start Pact over again because hopefully on the second read through it would be a little bit less infuriating.
All right, so here's some stuff like designs and concepts I believe they had for the John Carpenter remake of The Creature of Black Lagoon.
Yeah, I mostly used it for the sake of rhetoric, Dragon Turtle, because when dealing with stupid people, you basically have to speak in cliches in the hope that they will understand you. Basically, is the issue here. It's definitely not something I take any sort of pride in. The "what have you done for me lately" impulse, but I've tried reasoning with these people over and over and over again. There's only so much reasoning I have the capacity to do. So, in absence of the ability to reason with people, I'm forced to freaking get flippant. Anyway, moving on.
Right, but as this looks really good, and it always pains me because John Carpenter is awesome, and the fact that he didn't get to make this movie is a downright tragedy.
Yeah, I'm honestly surprised that John Carpenter even has to justify himself. Honestly,
This was in the 90s.
right, but
Granted,
still,
he would have had about 20 years of work at that time.
but like at this point in Hollywood, all he really should be able to say is, "I'm John Carpenter and I want to make X horror movie," and they should be like, "Okay, how much money do you need, John?" Because at this point, the pedigree of John Carpenter should be so sacrosanct that it doesn't even need to be a conversation anymore. Similar to Clive Barker, also, and Wes Craven. Like we're in that territory of, if this person comes to you saying, "I want to make a horror movie," the only question should be, how big does the check need to be? Because at this point, those three horror movie personages are basically an excuse to print money. It's kind of like when Guillermo del Toro comes to you and says, "I want to do a dark fantasy about X." The question should be, how big does the check need to be, Guillermo? But then again, I'm more susceptible to fanboyism with regards to these people than other people might be, so that might be the issue. Because if I were a Hollywood money person and someone like that came to me and said, "I want to do this thing that I'm very well known for doing correctly," the answer should be, how big does the check need to be? But I'm weird, so that might be why. Anyway, moving back to the article.
The article's done.
Oh, is it? That was a very short article, must be.
That was short.
So next.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm setting it up right now. All right. Okay, so this is the official trailer for Kraven the Hunter.
My son,
Oh,
we are hunters.
shit.
The greatest the world has ever known.
The audio's coming through all right, if nothing else, so that's good. Yeah, but it's Morbin time again, folks. This time with the leopard skin variant, or lion skin variant, I guess.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I forgot this was a thing for a bit just because it's been a while since we covered the first trailer.
Yeah, I didn't forget it was a thing, but only because I consider it Sony once again finding a way to shoot themselves in the foot. Just like Madam Web, just like Morbius, they will never learn the lesson of the early 2000s were 20 goddamn years ago. Please get with the fucking times of how to properly make a comic book adaptation. Or at the very least, hire someone with enough talent to cover your ass like you did with Sam Raimi. If you don't either get with the times or hire someone talented enough to cover your ass, then you're probably going to fail.
Alright, so
Yes, banana.
banana.
My son, we are hunters, the greatest the world has ever known.
Охотник, это сказки. Сказки.
If nothing else, Aaron Taylor Johnson will give one hell of a performance.
Russell Crowe, to his credit, isn't phoning it in. So good for
No,
Russell Crowe.
I don't think he ever does, to be honest. Even when he's put in like crap projects.
Yeah, he always tries something. Like, for as much as a lot of people make fun of his Javert from Les Mis, he sang he sang correctly. It's just that he's familiar with the more like rock opera type music and less so the like Broadway style musical music. And I still think that
Yeah,
I still think that Russell Crowe starring in an adaptation of Father Gabriel Amort's exorcism like movies would be better than adapting the Warrens for the 500th fucking time. Those goddamn poser hacks. I have a visceral hatred for Ed and Lorraine Warren. They are absolute charlatans, and I hate them. And I hate that Hollywood movies have managed to make them so goddamn well known. They do not deserve it. They are hacks. And they are an insult to anyone who actually believes in this shit. So, if The Pope's Exorcist ever gets a sequel wherein Russell Crowe was playing Father Gabriel Amort, so much the better. Because I have more respect for Father Amort as an exorcist than I do Ed and Lorraine goddamn Warren and their charlatan hackery. Visceral hatred. Moving on. Banana.
banana.
Is правда.
Who's next?
I heard the noise of thunder.
Are you like your father? A gangster?
Like, the
Yes, this
trailer.
does look a lot better than.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it does look better than like some of the other movies that had come out before.
Yeah, but as I recall, the trailers for Morbius didn't look awful. The trailers for Madam Web did seem really quite phoned in, but like, I don't see anything here that suggests to me that this isn't just another Morbius. Other than Russell Crowe is doing his damnedest to make a performance out of this, and Aaron Taylor Johnson, I'm sure, is trying his very best as well, but two good performances in an otherwise shit movie do not a good movie make. Anyway, banana.
I'm gonna be honest. I think if it wasn't framed as Craven the Hunter, it actually would be. It like I'm looking at this like if it wasn't named that.
Like, if
It's
they had
big-
actually done something original, yeah, it might actually be something. But knowing that it is supposed to be in the same universes as Madam Web and Morbius, I don't have high hopes.
Banana?
Banana.
A killer?
And I heard a voice. And behold, hell followed with him. There's a man going round taking names. Myself.
I'm gonna parrot something that I've heard a lot of people say. This would be a much better Kraven the Hunter movie if it was focused on Russell Crowe's character, because Russell Crowe seems like a much more comic accurate version of Kraven the Hunter than Aaron Taylor Johnson does. Because they keep trying to frame the villains as anti-heroes rather than letting them just be villains, and it's annoying.
Fair enough.
Banana.
Banana.
And he decides who to free and who to blame. Yes, and animals stronger than you can imagine. The hairs on your arm will stand up.
Tell me about this hunter.
Some are born and some are died.
Once you're on his list, there's only one way off.
I just now realized who Russell Crowe's performance here reminds me of. Reminds me of Viggo Tarasov from John Wick. The first one.
Yeah, I can see that.
Other than
Banana?
that, I don't really. Other than that, I don't really have anything to say. Banana.
When the man comes around. When the man comes around. Whoever is unjust.
You think you're some kind of honor, some kind of code.
They'll be unjust.
See, now it's kind of getting into sloppy B movie territory. The like foggy situation, so you can't see all the obvious cuts. I'm curious how much money that Phil Lord and Chris Miller are going to end up making on Spider-Verse 3 when this movie inevitably bombs. Because the more of these live-action Sony bombs that get produced, the more valuable Phil Lord and Chris Miller will be as creatives. So that's good at least. Banana.
Banana.
You're just another man
Whoever is righteous,
hunting for a trophy,
let him be righteous still.
just like our father.
When the man comes around. When the man comes around.
So, I am curious if they're going to handle it or not, but because in Marvel Comics, the Chameleon, another Spider-Man villain, and Kraven are brothers.
That's a good point. I don't think they'll mention it, because isn't this version of Kraven like souped up with lion DNA in a similar manner to how Halle Berry's Catwoman was with a cat spirit or some shit?
He got infected with lion DNA after killing one.
Yeah. So, given how similar that is to Catwoman of all things, they're gonna have to do a lot of work to make this not insufferable. Which, granted, between Russell Crowe and Aaron Taylor Johnson, I'm sure they'll do fine. But as the old expression goes, there's only so much you can do by polishing a turd.
Shall we?
Banana.
Banana.
Embrace who you really are, son. And you will become a legend. When the man comes around. When the man.
What's the release date on this?
Comes around.
December.
Oh dear. I wonder if they'll push it back again before it gets there. Because it was originally, I think, supposed to come out in September, and then they pushed it back. Anyway, next.
One moment.
Yep. Let's see what DT is. Yes, I know DC, but let's be real. That's not always how it's used. And frankly, we need to get to the point where they can get through the first half of the phrase before we worry about the second half too much. Because, my God, do they have a visceral hatred for the customer and a belief that the customer is immoral by default?
All right, so this was released at Comic-Con. Unfortunately, I could never find the. I was going to try and find the trailer leak for Fantastic Four First Steps,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's been taken down.
Yeah, I assume Disney's copyright department was quite particular on that point.
Though, from what I had seen of it, it looked actually pretty good. I know, and I guess we can't talk about this, casting Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom, which means they're not going to be doing Victor Von Doom.
Yeah, my standing theory, and it seems to be most other people's standing theory, is that they're going to do a version, air quotes, of Doctor Doom by combining the what if Tony Stark was the Sorcerer Supreme story with the infamous Iron Man, where Victor took over for Tony as Iron Man when Tony was dead for a minute there. Both stories are not well liked by either Iron Man fans or Doom fans, so I think it's a very stupid. Because here's the thing, we talk a lot, or at least I talk a lot about the importance of fan service, but here's the thing, there is such a thing as bad fan service, and this is a good example, because this type of fan service is more about pandering than it is about actually pleasing the fans. And the reason we know that is because, as previously stated, this is not a story or a set of stories that is well liked by Iron Man fans. My friend Moran, you would probably be blowing a gasket if she was here right now. And it's not well liked by Doctor Doom fans. And it's not a decent adaptation of what anyone generally means when they say they want an adaptation of Doctor Doom. It's kind of telling that the cheaply made, like less than $1 million version of the Fantastic Four from the 90s is still better than any of the versions of Doctor Doom that we've gotten so far, or that we seem to be getting from the MCU. The only reason they're bringing RDJ back, it feels like, is because they think they can get the normie audience on board by bringing RDJ back, whether or not it makes any sense for his character, or whether or not RDJ can even play a good version of Doctor Doom. Because Doctor Doom is a character that, ever since the Tim Story Fantastic Four movies in the early 2000s, they have for some reason avoided letting Doom be who he is supposed to be. They keep trying to make him some kind of mutant or some kind of cosmic creature rather than a sorcerer from Eastern Europe who just happens to be really good at robots as well, who is who Doctor Doom is. He is the person who is second only to the Sorcerer Supreme in the skill of sorcery. He is the man who lost his mother in a bargain with Mephisto, and he is the guy who is such a genius that even though he splits his talents between sorcery and technology, he is adequate enough at both to be second only to the Sorcerer Supreme in sorcery and second only to Reed Richards in terms of technology. None of that can be conveyed by a alternate universe version of Tony Stark, who is also the Sorcerer Supreme and also infamous Iron Man.
There's also the thing of like an idea that Stan Lee had originally created for the villain, of a villain who is an untouchable for his crimes, because Victor Von Doom has diplomatic immunity, because he is the dictator or leader, if you want to be charitable, of Latveria.
In fairness to Victor here, playing Doom's advocate here, he is very, very good to his people of Latveria. Like, I know it's a cliche that the benevolent dictator secretly isn't, but in the case of Victor Von Doom, if you don't cross him and you give him no reason to fuck with you, he's actually a really nice guy. He is kind of what Lex Luthor wishes he could be, or thinks he is, with regards to his relationship with Superman. The only reason he hates Reed Richards is because Reed Richards gets in his way, and the only reason he hates any of the other heroes is as and when they get in his way.
Well, no, he hates Reed for a lot of reasons.
Well, I mean, yes, but the majority of the reason why Victor Von Doom is a villain is simply because he considers himself the rightful ruler of the world, and he doesn't seem to understand why people won't just accept that rule. Which, I mean, to be fair to Victor, once again, playing Doom's advocate here, he's not bullshitting when he claims that he's probably the most qualified person to be the world dictator if he were elected the world dictator. Like, he is one of the cases where he is grandiose, yes, but his grandiosity and the actual reality of the situation tend to line up pretty well. I.e., he is pretty much as good as he thinks he is. He just doesn't understand why other people won't get out of the way and let him rule. Which, at least during the periods where he is grounded enough that he wants to keep his rule in the borders of Latveria, I see no reason why we shouldn't just leave the guy alone. His people love him, and they actually love him, not in the North Korean sense, but his people love him, and he does right by his people. So as long as he keeps it within the barriers of, within the borders of Latveria, I say leave the motherfucker alone. He's doing a good job, all things considered.
But kind of getting back on track. I will say this: when I'd seen the leaked trailer of the Fantastic Four First Steps,
Hmm.
it looked good because, for one thing, I think that it really leaned into like the very space age adventure. Like it seemed to really get the Fantastic Four. Obviously, Doom wasn't in there, but
I didn't end up seeing that trailer, so all I know about the story is stuff that has been leaked over the course of the last few months. I'm not particularly optimistic, especially not with the newly announced Iron Doom, but I hope and pray as ever that I am wrong.
well, if nothing, I don't think they're going to do Doom in the first movie.
Which, yeah, fair enough. I mean, if it were up to me, the person I would have casted as Doom, even though he's played a role in Marvel once already, it was a very one-off, thankless role. I would have gotten Mads Mikkelsen to play Doom. Mads Mikkelsen could have played Doom in his sleep, and it would have been amazing. Anyway, shall we, Banana?
I was trying to think who I'd go with. I mean, Mads Mikkelsen isn't bad. I'm not like although I'm trying to think who would if I had to pick someone who hadn't had a role already.
I don't know of many Eastern European actors.
Well, I was just gonna pick someone who can do the grandiosity, but also quietness and intimidating, and a lot of like really get Doom. And there's one that comes to mind. I don't think he's Eastern European. Viggo Mortensen.
He might be able to do it. How old is he? He might be a little bit old now.
No, yeah,
Okay.
that was also another concern of mine. Give me one second.
What about, speaking of like Eastern European people? Because yes, it is very much important that Latveria is basically pseudo-Romania, and therefore Doctor Doom and his family are basically pseudo-gypsies. Christoph Waltz, that's who I was thinking of.
Oh yeah,
Christoph Waltz would be another excellent choice to play Doom, assuming they couldn't get Mads Mikkelsen. I genuinely think Mads Mikkelsen would be a slightly better fit for the role because he's actually Lithuanian, if I'm not mistaken, which is very much the part of the world that Latveria is in vis-a-vis the Marvel Universe. And we know that Mads Mikkelsen can play the genius level super intellect because, well, Hannibal exists. And he did a decent job in the movie where he was allowed to play Gellert Grindelwald in the Harry Potter franchise as well. So, like, if someone exists who was basically crafted in a lab to play Victor Von Doom, it would be Mads Mikkelsen. But failing getting Mads Mikkelsen, Christoph Waltz would probably be my second choice. Because we know he has the acting chops, definitely. And he's also from more of a Germanic background than a like Romanian-ish background, but he could play Doom and it would be believable that he was from Latveria, which is basically kind of pseudo-Romania in the Marvel Universe. Moving on though. Banana.
Well, there was also going to be a thing I brought up before, but regarding the Fantastic Four First Steps. So
Go ahead.
it is supposed to be set in the 60s, though. Another universe that is pseudo, like a
variant universe.
retro futuristic.
I mean, this was a catch-22 no-win scenario because either they would have had to have retconned the 60s of the Marvel Universe somehow, or they would have had to have set it in another universe. There was literally no winning here because most of the canon events of the MCU proper are already set. You can't really add another new faction that we've never seen before on top of that without making an excuse as to why no one has heard of the Fantastic Four until now. So either they would have to go more multiverse, or they would have to retcon the timeline of the MCU. And in either case, they were kind of fucked. Of course, they could have at least guaranteed a proper Doom instead of pandering and getting RDJ to do it. But again, they were up shit creek without a paddle, so they had to make do with what they had, I suppose.
Right. Also, the casting for them, I think, is actually really good.
Would have preferred if they had kept Office guy whose name I forget, guy who was Jim.
I'll be honest, I don't really care. I think Pedro Pascal can do a lot better job than John Krasinski.
I think that since they already established Reed Richards in Multiverse Madness, they should have played the ball where it lied. Instead of stunt casting, but again, yeah, because Pedro Pascal is diverse.
He's also a phenomenal actor.
Right, but we've already seen Reed Richards in Multiverse Madness. He's John Krasinski. He should have stayed John Krasinski because variants look the same even if they are different as per the rules of the Again, I'm not saying it's an ideal situation because they would have been screwed no matter what they did, but I feel like it's a betrayal of the fan base to give them the fandom or the fan casting of Reed Richards in Multiverse of Madness and not to stick with it.
I don't know.
It creates more problems than it solves, much like bringing RDJ back as not Doom rather than just making a good version of Doom. But like I said, my hopes for this movie are not very high at all because
Don, you're a bitter cynicist. So
I always hope to be wrong, but the writing is on the wall. They've already made at least 3 beds for themselves to lie in, and are choosing to lie in none of them. So, unfortunately, while I hope to be wrong, I don't have high hopes for this movie.
So this is a theme that was released during the D23 Expo, I think, or was it Comic-Con? I'm not sure.
I think it was D23. It might have been Comic-Con though.
And it's made by Michael Giacchino. Hugh Dalton's obligatory. Why the fuck did he fuck up Doctor Strange?
Yeah, this is the thing with Giacchino. I love Giacchino. Every time he actually puts the effort in, he makes something amazing. And his first directorial role in Werewolf by Night is probably my favorite thing that the MCU Phase 4 ever gave us. But in the case of the Doctor Strange theme he made in 2016, all he did was take his Star Trek Beyond theme and reuse it with a sitar in the background. And that frustrates me. That says to me that Giacchino thinks that Doctor Strange is not worthy of having his own theme, which is an odd thing to think because, judging by how well he adapted Werewolf by Night, he likes the supernatural side of the MCU. So why in the fuck didn't you give the, foremost magic user of the MCU his day in court as far as his original theme goes? Fortunately, we got, it Danny Elfmanized in Multiverse of Madness, and Danny Elfman can turn anything awesome. And I think that the theme is definitely better for having filtered through both Giacchino and Danny Elfman, but it will never cease to flummox me that a guy who I otherwise have nothing but the most respect for apparently phoned it in when he was tasked with adapting my character. So there. We'll see if he did any better by the Fantastic Four. And I will try not to be bitter about it. Keyword being try.
We both know you're lying. You're always going to be bitter about it.
That's why I use the word try. It leaves open the possibility that I will fail.
I just don't see the point in saying you'll try when we just know you're just going to be bitter.
Because to make the attempt is noble, even if it's a doomed effort.
Seems like a lie, to be fair, but okay.
Anyway, Banana. We've waxed lyrical about the background of this for like 20 minutes, and I still want to do the Agatha thing tonight, so...
Right, yeah, fair enough. Audio coming through?
Yes. This is a rather odd choice for a theme.
Well, it's a slow start. It's slow. I can understand that. It's like only the first 20 seconds.
I was
So-
expecting something a little bit more action-oriented. This almost sounds like the kind of music that Franklin and Valerio would have in their, like, crib, assuming that they're in this movie.
I'm also getting a sense of like, well, okay, it's what is the Fantastic Four's like whole thing?
First family of comics.
Okay, that, but I guess the core idea of them is like they're explorers, right? They're adventurers. The first 20 seconds of this, I get a sense of wonder and awe. So is it. I think it's.
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Wonder, awe, and again, it's just starting. Like it's building up as music is tend to do.
Right. I don't know. I guess it gives me kind of 1904 World's Fair vibes, sort of like
Well, it's
Small
supposed to be
World
set in
or
an
something
alternate-
like that. Which
Yeah, fair enough. I can see where you're going with that because, again, it's supposed to be set in, like an alternate 60s.
yeah, if it's
So
set in this, if it's set in the 60s and is supposed to be retro futuristic, I can sort of see why that would be a basis for a theme. I was just expecting something way more like action oriented and synthy rather than
I
1960s
don't really see the Fantastic
advertising.
Four. I'll be honest, I don't really see Fantastic Four being like super. I mean, adventure, sure, but like action, I don't know. I guess it depends.
Well,
But
I mean, they're a superhero team.
that's never what. Uh, to be fair, I'm me, and the thing that's always drawn me to the Fantastic Four, has never really been like the action.
Well, and in fairness, I've never seen them really as explorers, so I guess we're both just kind of confused on this point. I've always seen them as scientists first and foremost, superheroes second, and
Well, I think
adventurers
that's
a distant third.
well,
I've never thought to use the word explorer to talk about any of them. I'd
I
even
feel
make
like
the argument that like celebrity would work better because of course Johnny Storm being a showboat and using the fame that being part of the Fantastic Four gives him is definitely a thing.
well, also that was kind of Reed's whole point is that his friends wouldn't be seen as freaks and monsters. Thus, the creation of the Fantastic Four. It's a whole thing.
Yeah. It's just I think we can both agree that this is a rather counterintuitive way to open things with. Anyway,
I don't think it's counterintuitive, to be fully honest.
I'm sticking with counterintuitive. It's the nicest I can be to it so far. Banana.
Jesus Christ, you are so bitter about whatever.
I can want to be wrong, but I'm not going to sit here and try to glaze something that I don't think is good.
Okay, you know what? That is fair. I will always appreciate your honesty, as brutal and kind of jackassery it comes across. To be fair, that is you, so I don't know why I'm being such an asshole.
I'm harsh because I actually want I want people and things to improve in a meaningful way. And the way I see it, you can't improve if people are always blowing smoke up your ass.
No, I get that. I'm just saying, like, it feels. I'm not disagreeing with your point. I'm just making the thing of like, it's just coming across as like kind of how do I say this? Pretentious nitpicking, I guess.
I mean,
like, I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm not trying to be a dick about it. I'm saying that. I'm just saying that it seems like you're just being like hostile right off the bat.
the way
Critical of it. I guess it's just maybe it's just me being maybe it's just me. It just kind of sounded like you were coming off as like just kind of being an asshole for being just to be an asshole.
The way I'm looking at this right now is very similar to the way I reacted to James Gunn's DCU announcement way back when. There are a lot of semi-decent ideas going here,
Okay.
but I don't think they're meshing in any way that I would think would make much sense. And that's why I'm weirded out and kind of confused, because there is potential here, but too many ideas are going against each other and not really coming together as a cohesive whole.
I don't know if I agree with you, just because to me it seems fine.
But anyway,
But then again, out of both of us, I'm supposed to be the I'm supposed to be the optimist. So
you're the optimistic one. Anyway, let's get through this because I still want to do the Agatha thing tonight. But yeah. Why am I getting like Tim Burton's Willy Wonka vibes from this?
I honestly argue that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. But again, it's trending more 1904 World's Fair or Epcot than it is retro future sci-fi. Like it almost reminds me of like a feel good Steven Spielberg movie, and I'm not
That's a
sure.
thing.
Huh?
That's a thing.
Yes. In his prime, Steven Spielberg was the master of the feel good family movie.
I'm
But
calling
it's,
bullshit.
I mean, guy who gave us E.T., guy who gave us like
Bullshit. No. There is no way that motherfucker did E.T.
Yes, he did.
What
Steven
the
Spielberg.
fuck?
Steven motherfucking
I
Spielberg.
thought you said Stephen King.
No, Steven Spielberg.
Okay, sorry. That's where I was confused. I thought you said Stephen King. What the? I was like thinking, what the fuck?
Your brain exploded or something, or there was a wiring issue for a second. But yeah, Steven Spielberg. This is giving me 80s Steven Spielberg vibes. And that's not exactly a bad thing, but it's a really weird way to go with the Fantastic Four, I think. Like, yes, they're the first family of comics, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have to be in a quote-unquote feel-good family movie. That's like this movie, based just on this soundtrack, is very like seems very youth-oriented, and I'm not unless like Franklin and Valeria are going to be the main characters. I don't see why someone would do that. Like, unless the kids are supposed to be the main characters, then I guess this would make sense. But making Franklin and Valeria Richards the main characters of the very first MCU Fantastic Four movie would be a very weird choice, I think.
I think it could work just because you get to see the perspective of the kids. Because, well, one thing, they grow up in that they're not it's all the weirdness is just kind of part of their family life.
Right, which is why I would save Franklin and Valeria for like a second or third Fantastic Four movie. Like, I would end the first movie with Sue getting pregnant, and then open the second movie with Franklin and Valeria in their cribs, and then like we could see them grow up as the trilogy goes on. But it seems weird that Franklin and Valeria are already here, if they are already here in this movie.
It could be a pre-established Fantastic Four, which
is really
weird.
Given the fact that it's a really weird.
They fumbled the origin multiple times.
Well, but that's the thing. You can't really do a pre-established origin if they've fumbled the origin multiple times, because most of the audience are going to be familiar with the Fantastic Four from the Tim Story ones, which weren't a good adaptation. So, like, in the case of the Fantastic Four, you actually kind of do have to put some effort into putting an origin story together, because they've ruined the origin story so many freaking times, both with the Tim Story ones and then with 1040. Which isn't to say that the Tim Story ones didn't have any good qualities about them. I still think that Rise of the Silver Surfer has my favorite Reed Richards moment of the entire Fantastic Four adaptations, but like, because the origin story for the Fantastic Four has been botched so many times, you kind of have to put in the effort to show average Joe and Jane public what a proper adaptation of Fantastic Four is supposed to be. It's not something you can have intuitively like you can with Spider-Man and Batman, because in this case there hasn't been a good adaptation of Fantastic Four yet. The closest thing would be the the one from the 90s, whose name I forget. Freaking. I keep wanting to say John Carpenter because we were talking about John Carpenter earlier, but that's not right. Fucking.
Oh, okay. Sorry, a bit of a side rant here. Just a question, and I'll look it up too. The director of that 1990 something Fantastic Four movie.
I know it. It's just his name is his name is absent from my brain at the moment. The one that was made for like only $1 million.
But what superhero would you want John Carpenter to make a movie of?
John Carpenter. Probably, honestly, The Living Mummy. John Carpenter's The Living Mummy would be awesome. Because Encanto is an awesome character. We already have Werewolf by Night established thanks to the special, and we're eventually going to have another Blade at some point. So have John Carpenter do The Living Mummy, and then let's get a monstrous Howling Commandos movie together. Awesome.
Ole Sasson. Fantastic Four movie. It was the Ole Sasson.
That's not right. The unreleased one?
Yeah.
With
Yeah,
John.
Ole Sasson.
That's not right. I've never heard that name before. It's not John Carpenter. It's John.
I'll tell you, man. I'm looking it up.
Hang on. Let me get up. Fantastic Four. '94 film. Fantastic Four released in 1994 superhero film based on Marvel Comics. Blah 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 blah. Who was the goddamn? Directed by, screenplay by, based on cinematography. Mark. Who's the cast? Production. And producer. And what the fuck is that? Who the fuck are they? Okay, who the fuck is this person? Because that name is not real. Roger Corman. That's the name I kept thinking of. Roger Corman. That's who originally directed the. There we go. Roger Corman. The name finally fucking hit me. But yeah. Roger Corman's Fantastic Four is probably still the best Fantastic Four we've gotten so far. Annoyingly. So they actually do have to spend time doing an origin story for them this time, because otherwise average Joe and Jane public aren't going to know anything about the Fantastic Four other than what they've seen in the Tim Story ones. And nobody fucking watched Fantastic, thank God. So, yeah. Anyway, moving on, because I still want to do the Agatha one tonight, and we have to get through this. Okay.
I will admit this is a bit slow for a theme.
Random sense of whimsy, a la like a 90s family movie, but why? This is such a weird tone to go for. Again, unless Franklin and
No,
Valeria are.
I don't mind the tone of the music. I'm just saying it's no. Okay. Again, we're looking at it from two very different perspectives here. I don't mind the tone. I don't mind any of that. I'm just stating that it's a bit slow.
Yeah, this theme isn't, at least not yet. It's not very hummable, and that's my number one test for a theme. If it can actually get stuck in your head and be hummable. This is very much.
I don't know
not
about the hummable, but I do agree with the. I don't. I don't know about hummable, but I agree with like getting stuck in your head.
Anyway, banana.
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 Where there's a
Okay.
synth.
Yeah, there's a little bit of the synth I was looking for. Still doesn't seem quite right, but okay. I get the impression they're going more for a sense of wonder, and I'm not sure why.
They're explorers. They're adventurers. Seriously, dude, have you ever read a Fantastic Four comic?
I still don't know where the fuck you're getting Explorer from. But okay.
They were astronauts. How the fuck do you not get explorer from that?
Astronaut doesn't say explorer to me, it says scientist, especially with the Fantastic Four.
Okay, again, you are one of the weirdest motherfuckers I know. If you don't, okay.
When you say explorer to me, I'm picturing somebody like Indiana Jones or John Hammond from Jurassic Park. That's what I.
No. Indiana Jones is not a fucking explorer. He's an archaeologist. That's a totally different thing.
Okay, now you're the one who's being really weird. Like, explorer to me says like Robin Williams' character from Jumanji, or freaking.
I feel like we have a really okay. We have two very
Alan
different
Quartermain from
Hey,
League
hold
of
on.
Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Hold on. Sorry for yelling. I feel like we're at an impasse here because we have not defined the term of explorer.
Yeah.
What is your definition of an explorer? And not examples. I'm talking about like an actual definition you can give me.
One thing is for sure, they definitely should be earthbound. That's why I'm very confused as to why you're lumping astronauts in there.
Wait, what? Okay, I'm sorry. That is how you determine it. That's how you define explorer. Earthbound.
Well, that's one of the criteria. Yes. An explorer, an explorer is someone who explores unknown places on Earth.
Okay, well, that's a very limited view of that word. No offense. My definition of explorer is someone who ventures to, ventures to far off lands, either on Earth or off Earth, and discovers various things unknown to mankind, or really the civilization of where they're from, to kind of keep it broad. Examples, obviously, like I guess you could say sort of Star Trek, like the early, like original Star Trek. And yeah, I would classify the Fantastic Four as explorers.
Yeah, they're nowhere near my definition of explorers. My definition of explorer would include people like Alan Quatermain, Indiana Jones, John Hammond from Jurassic Park. Let's see. Brendan Fraser's character in Journey to the Center of the Earth. Or in fact, Brendan Fraser's character in the Mummy movies. Yeah, my definition of explorer has nothing to do with astronauts.
And that is where we differ in terms of our perspective of things.
Well, okay, actually, I might be persuaded to include them in the category of explorer if we're talking about like Jules Verne's from the Earth to the Moon or the Island of Dr. Moreau, maybe. But like, yeah, that's definitely different from anything relating to like Star Trek.
Okay, I don't think we're gonna really change our minds on this, mainly because we have two very different
Anyway, we've got to get
definitions
through
of a
this to get.
specific word here.
Yeah, we've got to get through this to get to the positive thing tonight. So, banana.
I would argue that
It's fine. It's a serviceable, generic, like 80s family movie soundtrack. I don't know how it tracks on it.
One thing, name me a recent Marvel movie that has that doesn't have a generic soundtrack.
I mean,
talking-
the
original
answer.
score.
Yeah, obviously the answer I was going to give was Danny Elfman's take on the Doctor Strange theme in Multiverse Madness. But yeah, point taken. Marvel is shit with themes. Most of their themes are not hummable, with the possible exception of the original Avengers theme.
Well, I would also argue Captain America.
The problem is, you say Captain America theme to me, and my brain is not conjuring up any. Like, it doesn't remind my brain of anything. And therein lies the problem with a lot of Marvel themes. They're there to be background noise and not really to leave much of an impact on the viewer in and of themselves, for the most part. Which is
You're
somewhat
both
sad.
explorers. You're both weird. Explorers are just people going to unknown places, at least places where they come from, and exploring them.
Yeah,
I mean, Giant Turtles actually. Okay, Giant Turtles have a point actually. So,
like I said, to me, explorer is very much a artifact of the 19th century at the latest. Explorer ceases to have any meaning in the modern day, mostly. Like when you say explorer to me, I'm either thinking of people like Columbus and Magellan, or I'm thinking of people like the people who explored the Amazon jungles and discovered the Mayan pyramids and shit. I'm not really I'm not really thinking of astronauts as explorers. Astronauts are at best scientists, and more often than not just their own category altogether.
sometimes I find your perspective of things oddly limited.
Well, if it's any consolation to you, I find yours very confusing too sometimes. So there's that. Anyway, I really want to get to the Agatha thing tonight, so we have to fucking move through this. Banana.
I'll be honest. Every time I think of a Fantastic Four theme, it's from the cartoon World's Greatest Heroes. If everyone remembers that.
The classic. Reed is fantastic.
No,
Sue can
No.
braid from sides.
no, I'm not talking about that one.
What one are you talking about?
World's Greatest Heroes from the 2000s.
I must have not watched that one very much. Because the only Fantastic Four theme that I think of when I think of Fantastic Four is that one. The one from, I think, the 90s. And come to think of it, why the fuck didn't they just adapt that theme into a cinematic theme for this?
Because it doesn't sound good.
Sounds fine. Same thing with why they I don't understand why they never did a play on the God of Thunder, Mighty Thor for Thor's, or well, I guess they kind of did do an homage to when Captain America throws his mighty shield in the first Captain America, and they kind of made it a tee-hee sort of comedic reference, which I guess is fine. But yeah, they never do make use of any of the like music that's already pre-established to connect to these characters, do they? That's somewhat annoying of a realization. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, let me hold on. Because I don't really think we need to listen to more of it, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna get better.
Well, that and also I don't want to run into any problem. I mean, we were watching maybe like hour and a minute and 20 seconds already. I don't want to run into any DMCA thing.
Yep. So moving on to the Agatha thing.
Give me 1 sec. I'll be honest. I thought you sent that for next week.
Nah, I didn't think we had a already positive thing for this week, so I was suggesting that as the positive thing. Plus, it came out like a week and a half ago, and we didn't cover it, so it felt weird that we didn't cover it. Plus, this song has lived rent free in my head for like 3 days because it's awesome. So that's a good sign.
All right, again, give me like a second.
Yep.
Snooze.
You kind of seem like you're on a delay, I think is what he's getting at.
I have crappy internet. This is not new.
Yeah, again, my desire to buy you a modem for Christmas is rising.
Unless you can give me a better internet provider, I don't think a new modem is going to help.
This is also true. He's getting over a cold, DT. That's probably why he sounds tired. Anyway.
Yeah, I've been so. All right.
Yeah, we both caught the same sickness on last Saturday night. of all things. Which is weird considering that we're not geographically like close to each other at all. I'm in Pennsylvania, he's all the way over in Indiana.
Alright, Dylan sent this, obviously because he will not stop sucking the dick of Agatha Harkness in the MCU.
Figuratively, obviously, because we don't need to imply she's a trap or something. But
Would it really
yeah,
matter to you?
yes, trannies aren't attractive.
Huh.
They confuse my attractiveness standards because I'm caught between do I judge them by their biological sex and judge them based on those attractiveness standards, or do I judge them by their assumed gender and judge them by those attractiveness standards? And in either case, most transgender
You're
people don't rise to the level of being attractive. Anyway, Marvel
See, I saw- Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
Marvel released a song from the upcoming Agatha All Along show for, I believe, D23. It is called The Ballad of the Witch's Road, and it is awesome. It has actually managed to make me somewhat optimistic for Agatha All Along, which I was already cautiously optimistic for, even though the first trailer didn't look all that good. But this song is awesome, and if the show manages to be even half as awesome as this song, it will be cool. So that's good. Anyway, Nightshade, because witchy.
That's a DC thing.
No, it's an actual herbal thing.
No, I know, but there's a character called Nightshade in DC, so.
Based on the actual name of the herb. That is a thing.
Dude, you are killing me.
Because I was confused why your brain went to DC before it went to the actual herb that exists in real
To be
life.
fair, I was recently looking that character up and doing some research, so that's fresh in my head.
Okay, that explains that. Anyway, Nightshade.
It's actually also fun fact. It is a well, it's the name of a realm as well in DC, so it's a whole thing. I'm sorry. I like I said, I did research and it's just been fresh in my head. So
Anyway, Nightshade.
I stray not from the path, I hold death's hand in mine. Primal night, give it sight, familiar by thy.
I don't know why, but I'm getting "Come Little Children" from Hocus Pocus vibes.
Yes, it's great, isn't it? I
need to hear more because obviously it's the opening and but it's not bad.
Like I said, when I heard this,
theater nerds.
Well, I mean, yes, and also very much in the vein of being witchy, but this song shows that someone somewhere did homework, because in case the actual lyrics didn't make it all the way through because of the connection or whatever, the first verse is marching ever forward neath the wooded shrine. I stray not from the path, I hold death's hand in mine. Primal night giveth sight, familiar by my side. And I forget the rest of that verse, but it shows that someone somewhere took this job seriously enough to at least put like witch cliches in there, because of course there's a mention of the familiar, there's a mention of the fact that the witch is supposed to be a liminal force between life and death, and is supposed to be able to make death a friend, so to speak. And all of that is very much appreciated by someone like me, who is very much both in Marvel fandom and in IRL practice, very, very pro-witch. And it means that someone somewhere actually put more thought into being witchy in the case of Agatha all along than anyone did in the case of the Acolyte. Because this song basically single-handedly contains more witchy condensate than the entirety of Star Wars The Acolyte. Which is a good sign, if nothing else. Anyway, Nightshade.
Alright, come on, work, you piece of shit. There we go.
If sun be gone, we carry on. Spirit as our guide. Down, down, down the road, down the witches, down the witches, down the witches.
See, the only negative thing about this is that Catherine Hahn doesn't really have a decent singing voice. If I were Disney, I would have let a group of professional singers just sing the song the whole way through and call that enough of a sneak peek to Agatha all along. But I can understand for practical reasons why making Catherine Hahn have an appearance makes sense. It's just that either they should have told her to sing, in which case she would actually be singing and not just talking the lyrics, or they should have gotten someone who can sing to maybe lip sync her. Because the one downside here is that Catherine Hahn either isn't singing or wasn't allowed to sing, or she can't sing. And in either case, that's kind of a downer when your main character is the only one who can't carry a tune in a bucket. Anyway, Nightshade.
Down, down the witches, down the witches, down, down, down the witches, down the witches, down the witches, blood and tears and bone, maiden mother crow. The road is
And as I already alluded to, is the evocation of Maiden Mother Crone a little bit trite at this point, because everyone and their mother knows about the 3-in-1 at this point? Sure, but again, it at least shows basic familiarity with the subject matter, and that's still better than anything the Acolyte did. So I'm willing to take the win where I can. I'm more impressed with the first verse than I am with the second verse, and I feel like there could have been more content put in the song than just repeating "Down the Road" over and over again. But that's a nitpick, and I'm willing to at least meet them halfway, because they made the attempt to meet me halfway. That tends to be my standard. I'm not willing to meet someone wholly where they're at, but if someone is willing to meet me halfway, I will meet them halfway. And this song means that someone on the writing staff for Agatha all along did basic fucking homework, which is nice. Moving on. Nightshade.
Is wild and wicked, winding through the wood, where all that's wrong is right and all that's bad is good. Through many miles of tricks and trials, we wander high and low.
Maybe I'm filling in gaps for them a little bit too much here, but I did like the possibility that they are referencing As Above, So Below with the wandering high and low bit. And again, where all that's wrong is right and all that's bad is good is sort of a reference to the fact the witch is supposed to be standing in the center and be a liminal being. So again, someone somewhere did homework, and I don't know if anybody else on the planet noticed, but I fucking noticed, and it's appreciated. Basic witch competency is important if you're writing a show based wholly on witches. At least in the literary sense. Come on, throw me a bone here. Like, you don't have to do the technicals 100% right, but you at least have to get the literary aspect somewhere near the mark here, and they appear to have. So I approve. And Nightshade.
Take your fears, a door appears, the time has come to go. Down, 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 down.
You are right. It is very much giving Come Little Children vibes. Which is not bad company to be in as far as a Disney project with witch, vibe all running through it. It's certainly better. At least this song is better than anything that happened in Hocus Pocus 2. So again, points in its favor definitely, and I'm more hopeful and optimistic for Agatha All Along now than I was after reacting to the trailer, so that's a positive as well. Please don't let me down, guys. I want things that I like to be good, god damn it. But Nightshade.
Down, 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 witches road. Follow me, my friend, to glory at the end.
Again, small minor nitpick. I would have liked if there was a verse that mentioned Crossroads somewhere in there, because Crossroads are a huge deal for basically every kind of folk magic or folk witchcraft out there. And while we were throwing in a bunch of witch references, like with familiars and like with being liminal and all of the various different references and so on, it would have been nice if someone had thrown a Crossroads reference in there somewhere. But again, like I say, I'm willing to meet somebody halfway because someone on the writing staff very clearly did their fucking job. And hopefully this is a good sign of things to come moving forward with regards to Agatha All Along. Because originally when the focus on the Witch's Road was revealed in behind the scenes stuff, it really sounded like they were just kind of going through the motions. This song and this performance definitely has me thinking that they're not going to go quite as much through the motions as I thought they would have. And that's good, because I kind of, by virtue of being burned by so many different other franchises lately, kind of assumed that they were just gonna go through the motions and not really care much about Agatha as a character or her personality. But again, if this performance and this song are any indication, I was happily mistaken on that point, and there might be more effort put into this idea than I thought there was going to be, which is a good sign because it's supposed to start in September and run until Halloween, which is perfect fucking timing as far as releasing something witch oriented onto Disney Plus. Why they didn't think to do that with some of the other like witchy or supernatural oriented stuff they've done recently, I don't know, but they didn't. But someone was thinking on the staff of Agatha all along. So, sign of positive things to come, hopefully. Please. Anyway. Now we probably should go with the outros.
With that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avidase, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Shalom and fuck off.